Hello, and welcome to Caribbean Connections, Caribbean Airlines Thought Leadership Series, where we sit and chat with leaders from across the region to get the inside scoop of how they have achieved success and to provide a platform so they can share their perspective on issues impacting the Caribbean and the world. I am Dion Legore, the head of corporate communications at Caribbean Airlines, and I am delighted to host this series of conversations. In this episode, we will have as our guest Mr. Gerry Brooks. Gerry Brooks is described as an energetic game changer, and we wholeheartedly agree with this description. A past student of the esteemed Queen's Royal College, Trinidad, Mr. Brooks is a prominent alumnus of the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus, where in 2018 he was appointed Professor of Practice. An attorney at law, he is also a graduate of Columbia University, where he obtained an MBA, Dean's Honor Roll. Gerry Brooks is described as a veritable captain of industry for his eminence in the Trinidad and Tobago and regional business community. His proven leadership in the private sector is well known and documented. He is the former chairman of the National Gas Company and the retired Group Chief Operating Officer of the regional conglomerate ANSA McAL. Mr. Brooks has also served in several spheres of public life, regionally and in Trinidad and Tobago. Gerry Brooks is regarded as a regional thought leader and is known for his passion for transformation, sustainability, and ethical leadership. We are delighted to chat with him in this episode of Caribbean Connections. Mr. Brooks, welcome. It is certainly a pleasure to have you here. I love your smile and the energy that you bring to this set. So yes, I'll get straight into our conversation today. So, Mr. Brooks, you have a distinguished career. You are an attorney by profession and training. You have held senior positions in both the public and private sector, the former Chief Operating Officer at the ANSA McAL Group of Companies, no less. You have chaired the National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago, the Unitrust Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago. These are large and influential companies. Over your 30 years or so, what would you say are the attributes that have led you or enabled you to remain relevant and to keep your longevity in industry?
Dion, thank you very much for welcoming me to the CAL series, and congratulations to CAL on its excellent rebound in 2022. As a young person coming into business, I identified several mentors and persons whose example in terms of business and in life could provide lessons for me. And my career really has been based on some philosophical tenets in the first instance, and then some skills and attributes in the second instance. In the case of the philosophical tenets, I think that the first one is the philosophy of excellence, and what I call the double E, exceeding expectations. Tom Peters spoke many, many years ago about in search of excellence, and we have to characterize our work with excellence, our teams with excellence. And the other philosophical appendage to that is exceeding expectations. Always aim to exceed expectations. Whether they be of your customer, whether they be of your employee or other stakeholders, push your team to exceed expectations, and you inspire excellence and you deliver excellence in yourself. The second principle is that I saw with persons who had long and successful careers is that they were forces for good. Be a force for good. So it's okay to be excellent, and it's good to be excellent, and it's good to exceed expectations, but we are here not to simply make profit. We are here to be a force for good. A force for good at the company level, a force for good at the sector level, because I may be competing with my peers in the sector, but we have to grow the sector for the benefit of the country. and be a force for good for your country and be a force for good for your region, because we are here to inspire a better region, to create a larger economy, to solve some of the socio-economic difficulties. So the second important philosophical tenet is be a force for good. And then the third philosophical anchor is leave the asset, leave the company, leave the country better than you met it, because we are operating in trust for generations. So those are the three philosophical anchors that informed my career, and then inside of there was a body of skills that I tried to build. The first skill set and competency that I focused on and that I encourage teams that I lead to focus on is one, build subject matter expertise. You have to be strong in your subject area. And when I graduated, which is around the 80s, 83, 84, one of the things that I recognize is that problems come to you in multidimensional ways. And therefore, you couldn't build subject matter expertise only in one area alone. You had to build subject matter expertise in multiple disciplines at the same time. So it's a sort of duality, because no problem comes to you in a single dimension. Problems come to you in multiple dimensions, and you have to be solution-oriented to be able to find that sweet spot. Find the software in between both. Find those gaps and then drive to a solution. So the multidisciplinary approach. The second skill set is surround yourself with good teams. Incentivize those teams, resource the teams, challenge the teams.
Of course.
Be courageous, challenge your teams. And in challenging them, you bring the best out of them and they bring the best out of you. And you have to have the humility to listen to them, because sometimes they will take on the leadership role in the team. The third area is just keep learning and unlearning. When I was growing up in the early years, knowledge would last 3 to 4 years. Today, learning lasts 3 months. And some of the models and some of the tools and the techniques and the protocols and the precepts last only weeks. So it is learning and unlearning continuously. And Stephen Covey talks about it, sharpening the saw. And the final skill and attribute that I felt was important, and this actually was taught to me by my father, senior counsel and a judge, operate with professionalism and integrity. Operate with professionalism and integrity. Do not only be focused on the transaction, be focused on the relationship. And Kiffin Simpson in Barbados said it, my word is my bond. And if you want to have a long career, those are the attributes that I focus on. Learning and unlearning. Don't be afraid of complexity and ambiguity. Keep learning. Deep subject matter expertise, professionalism and integrity. So those have been some of my watchwords, and they've guided me. And I've had the benefit of good teams to support me and me to challenge them.
What is your view of the world economic outlook? How do you think this outlook will impact the region in the next 12 to 18 months or so?
Dion, over my 4 decades in business, starting in 1986 with the global difficulties on Wall Street, Y2K in 2000, the meltdown in 2008, and then we had a COVID Black Swan event. Today, what we are seeing globally is elevated uncertainty. We are seeing volatility in investment markets. The market as of September is, I think, the lowest level it has been in perhaps a decade. You have post-Brexit difficulties in the UK. You have the Ukraine war, Russia difficulties, which are impacting markets both from an energy standpoint and from a supply chain standpoint. You have Fed action, which is trying to get after inflation, and at the same time raising rates. You have other black swan events on the horizon. We are susceptible as a region to hurricane and windstorm damage. You'd have seen all of that action and all of that loss which occurred in 2017 and thereabouts. And then you have the specter of climate action. The impact on us in the region is substantial. From a COVID standpoint and post-COVID, we are seeing increased volatility coming through markets. We are seeing the knock-on impact of investment volatility on insurance company portfolios, banking portfolios, and through that banking results. We are seeing supply chain disruptions creating inflation in food, fuel. The Bahamas just yesterday increased fuel prices. You are seeing it impacting us in terms of raw materials. So it's a difficult time, both for capital markets and for us in the region. However, you are also seeing opportunity. And what are some of those opportunities? For those countries which are energy producing countries, Guyana, Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, you're seeing windfall gains. And there's an opportunity to use those windfall gains beneficially to recalibrate economies. And certainly in this time post-COVID, I think it's extremely important that we reimagine our economies, we recalibrate our economies, we also reposition our businesses. And what are some of the sectors in which we could do that? In the area of agriculture and agri-processing, there are huge opportunities. Our import substitution bill and our agricultural bill is $6 billion. That's a unique opportunity for farmers and for us as a community in Trinidad and Tobago to do some interesting things in aeroponics, aquaponics, in hydroponics, vertical farming, and in terms of mechanical farming. And to play those opportunities, whether they be in rice, cassava, whether they be in greens, kale, berries, whether they be in fish, to approach agriculture in some new ways and put agri-processing behind it, and all of the refrigeration and the distribution that goes with it, and to attract a whole cadre of young farmers coming to it who don't necessarily have to go on land, and who could approach it from a vertical standpoint, from a chemical standpoint, and from a technological standpoint. There's a significant area in energy. We can create a new cluster with Ghana, Suriname, and Trinidad and Tobago, using the century of skills that we have gathered in natural gas and in oil across the region, filling jobs, without bringing people from outside of the region, utilizing all of the resources in the region to create a new epicenter. There are opportunities in renewables, in biomass, in solar, in wind energy, in hazardous waste and the treatment of hazardous waste. So I am very, very encouraged by the raft of opportunities, whether they be in health, whether they be in entertainment, whether they be in fashion, whether they be in agri-processing. But we have to reimagine. We have to be bolder. We have to have the courage. We have to tool and support our people and use this post-COVID period to give us the opportunities to move forward and leverage digitization, because digitization makes scale possible. So I'm very, very encouraged. We have to focus, we have to reimagine, we have to reposition, and we have to get out there.
I am in agreement from the standpoint that as a region, there are things that we take for granted, and I think we take for granted our capability. We take for granted the resources that we have available here. And the power in us supporting one another, which you have so clearly articulated as a region. We can't forget Cuba as well, that 800-mile treasure of Cuba, because from the Western world standpoint, it still, for some of us, it still remains a bit mysterious, but it's one of my favorite places to visit, because I'm always impressed with what they do with so little. So a lot of the challenges that we see and not seeing the opportunities to create, they do it every day. And we have a lot to learn from each other and from the fact that COVID is not the end of the world. It actually is a prompt for a new beginning and to sort of shift how we look at things, to do exactly as you've said. We have to do better. We must reimagine.
Absolutely, and you spoke about Cuba. I have been to Cuba on several occasions. I've led delegations to Cuba, and I have been part of government delegations to Cuba. It's a country of 11 million people. It is twice as large as the Caribbean. It is a leader in technology in the area of renewables, health and health services. There is tremendous opportunities with QPET in the area of energy. And you also have the framework of the Cuba-CARICOM Treaty.
Yes.
And that allows us to have a whole new set of relationships, given the political evolution of Cuba and given the opportunities created in Cuba. There is still significant wealth and there is still significant capability that I think we have to tap into. And so I absolutely agree with you that there are tremendous, tremendous opportunities for us in the Caribbean as well.
It brings me to another point, the issue of movement. And as a region, it's one of the elements that we need to look at in a clearer way. Yes, we do have the movement in terms of the CSME, but what do you think it would make sense to sort of flatten our ability to move between and among countries, with requirements, of course, because there's the reality of crime and that type of movement that comes with that. But what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are at several different levels. We need an efficient regional transportation system. And an efficient regional transportation system, particularly sea-based as well as air-based, will allow for cheaper movement of goods and services within the region. That's absolutely necessary because it's critical to manufacturers that we have scale. So I am very supportive of a regional transportation system, both sea and air, that allows for movement of goods and services. I am also very supportive of the movement of professionals, technical people, and skilled people across the region. People will follow opportunity. We want to be able to scale up, and scaling up requires intellectual capacity, it requires ability, it requires energy. The other thing that I think we have to do is that standards in the region have to be harmonized. So that when I produce a report in Trinidad, the same report can be accepted in Barbados, the same report can be accepted in Jamaica. And that's standards across the board, whether they be manufacturing standards, whether they be service standards and protocols, we have to harmonize it because we have to have the one region philosophy, which allows us as a region to become more competitive and then to develop things like South-South trade protocols with the Africas, the Americas, the US, etc. So absolutely supportive of that.